So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for this webinar on dating and relationships. It's designed to provide advice and education on how to prepare for and find a dating partner. I'm Melissa Rosenberg with the Autism Society of Maryland, formerly the Howard County Autism Society. You may have heard that we have expanded our footprint and we now are serving Howard, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel counties. So we're happy to be here tonight, and I hope if you haven't already, you check out some of our resources. I'll put a link in the chat. We do have an adult social group that meets every week that might be of interest to you. So I'd like to introduce our presenter for tonight. Steven Isaacson works as a Senior Group Facilitator for DC Peers. He's a job coach by training and enjoys working with folks on the spectrum in community-based settings. He recently received his master's degree in social work at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. When he's not working, Steven is tending to his plants, camping, hiking, and pet sitting. Steven is on the autism spectrum. Steven, welcome. And I'm going to invite you to come on and go ahead and share your screen, and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. All right, let's get this slideshow going. All right, thank you everybody for being here. Really happy to present on this topic. I think it's a topic that a lot of people are interested in learning about, and there's not a lot of information out there. Of course, you can go on Google and look at it, but I think this is a topic that's full of a lot of stigma and things that people are just kind of worried about when they're going through these steps. So one of my goals today is to really break the stigma and shame around this topic. So I appreciate everyone being here, and for the Autism Society of Maryland for having me. So we'll go through the agenda today. We have a lot to talk about, so we'll try to pack it all in. First thing I want to do is have a poll and just get the feeling in the room, and then talk about maybe where we go to find a relationship, signs to look for in a person or setting, some tips on finding connection with the person you're talking to. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about online dating safety. It's very important. And provide some education around consent and boundaries, and then talk about TV show Love on the Spectrum. So if everyone would pull out their phones, I wanted to just do an exercise. Let me share my screen again. And then we're going to go to pull out your phones, and you're going to go to slido.com. So you can see it on the screen here, slido.com, slido.com, and type in the number you see here. You should have a spot for a pin. The number is 1752209. And the question we have here is, to get us started tonight, what is your biggest barrier to dating? And we should have a few people typing their responses. And if you want to use the QR code there to go to the website, you can as well. Really interested in hearing people's perspectives on this. It's a topic that everyone thinks about one way or another throughout their lifetime. Yeah, so getting some responses. What is your biggest barrier to dating? One person said anxiety. The other person said communication, meeting new people. And usually the biggest responses are the ones that come up the most. We have neurotypical versus neurodivergent communication, rejection, conversation, and boundaries. Yeah, so these are all very, very typical things that people go through when they think about dating and relationships. And today we'll talk about not just getting into the dating, but also what happens when you're in the dating. I think that's very important as well. So communication and boundaries, making friendships. Yes, friendships are actually very important. And the terminology we use around dating and relationship, sometimes it's just good to have friendships as well. So we'll get into that. Meeting new people, time management, unknown about others. That's interesting. Yeah, so we'll talk about some ways that we can learn about the people we're talking to. Balancing things. So that goes into time management a little bit, I think. Yeah, so I think some folks are looking at similar topics. And really the goal of this exercise is to just shatter the shame and stigma right off the bat, because dating is something that everyone, like I said, goes through one way or another in their lifetime. And sometimes, in this world we're in, we're isolated, or, we feel lonely. And so sometimes, even if we're friends with somebody, we don't have honest conversations about some of this stuff. And so really the goal is just to show you that, hey, you're not the only one going through this. Some person just said clueless, and that's perfectly okay. Right? Isolation, anxiety, communication. So we'll get into some of this stuff, but I really wanted to just let you know that it's okay that you're going through some of this, and other people are going through it too. All right. So we'll stop sharing. So I hope that was helpful. I hope people have found that to be educational. Okay. All right. So the purpose for tonight, like I said, is to help decrease stigma and shame. My goal is not for you to be an expert by the end of tonight, although it would certainly be cool if you were. I think this is something where everyone's learning all the time on dating and relationships, and even people who, found quote unquote success, whether they're in a relationship or they got married or whatever you think success looks like to you. People are still learning on the fly at all levels. Right. And so that's my cat, Ollie, on the left. He's going to be helping us out tonight. He's more than happy to do so in exchange for some treats, which I'm happy to oblige. Some other purposes for tonight, to really kind of help you learn about your own perspective and where you're coming from on this topic. We'll pose some questions to help you reflect on where you've been, where you are now and where you want to go. Sharing some resources and tools to hopefully get you on the right path. And then, maybe there's a tip that I shared tonight that, wouldn't work for you, but might work for someone else. And everyone has their own style for how they approach this dating and all that. So, once you try some stuff, if it works for you, great. If you develop your own thing that works, that's perfectly okay. All right, so I'm Steven. Just a quick background on me. I'm autistic. I'm a social worker interested in policy and practice. Neurodivergent at work. Autism at work is something I'm interested in. And I really enjoy facilitating group spaces to help people learn about themselves and other people, help them develop skills. And so dating and relationships is sort of an advanced social, I don't know if we can call it social skills or if it's like another category in itself. That might be interesting to think about. But I'm really interested in how do we apply some of this once we learn and once we think about where we're coming from, like how do we really apply some of this into our own lives and find success. So that's where I'm coming from. You can see I'm a pretty goofy guy. I like to have fun. I don't take myself too seriously. But I do like watching people succeed in life and learning about themselves. So the framework that I'm coming from on this is a lot of the thoughts and messages we get about dating and relationships really come from the media, right? The stuff we watch on TV, the movies, the TV shows, the magazines, the news stories. It all shapes how we think about this stuff and how we view ourselves in our journey of dating and finding friends. And so, when we think of movies, we think of like that Cinderella story, right? Where it's like that perfect couple, they kiss and they run off into the sunset. And in the case of Cinderella, someone turns into a pumpkin. But, it's a standard that it's like a perfect standard. And, well, life is just, not like that. And so over time, right, if we're getting all these messages from the media and movies and all that, we sort of expect that of ourselves. And furthermore, I would say we assume everyone else is doing the same thing, right? We assume everyone else is achieving success while we're not. But in reality, I think there's a lot of people who are having trouble doing some of this stuff, COVID, even before COVID, it was very hard. During COVID, it was even harder. And now we're trying to figure out like who are we and who is everyone else after in this post-COVID world. It's definitely, not the standard where we thought, the Disney Cinderella standard, right? So we sort of have to recalibrate, okay, what are our expectations in this? What are we expecting to achieve? What do we assume other people think of us? Do they think we're, nerdy, or do we think, we're worthless or whatever? Like, I think I would posit that, we have a lot of assumptions about what people think of us that are based on some other standard that we're, applying to ourselves and projecting out there. So I want to sort of challenge you to think about like, fact check some of that. You're probably cooler than you think. You're probably doing better than you think. But at the same time, it is hard. And I just want to validate that. When you're out there in the dating world, you're going to come across, a lot of people. And the thing is that they're trying to, first you have to figure out what they're trying to achieve, right? Are they trying to find a relationship? A lot of people are, having trouble. And so just assuming that like they have everything figured out and you don't, I don't think that's true a lot of times. I think people are just out there for a reason, right? A lot of people are struggling. And so I just wanted to challenge some of where we're, coming from on this, like, where are some of these thoughts coming from? And sometimes it's from the media. Okay, so got to throw a Pokemon reference in there, right? Professor Oak says there's a time and place for everything. Sometimes, it's a great place to find someone to date, strike up a conversation about, hey, are you single? Hey, are you, or what are you doing? Like, what do you like to do? Striking up a conversation to try and find a date. There are places to do that, and there are not places to do that, right? I went to a concert last week, and it can be very like social anxiety can take over, where you see a lot of people in a big group, or you see a lot of people kind of talking, and you walk in by yourself. A nice tip would be maybe to go with somebody, right, to one of these things. Going by yourself adds that kind of element of perceived isolation. If you're trying to go up to a group of people by yourself, right, it might not be, it might be harder to do that than if you were to go with a friend. So consider having like what people call a wingman or a wingwoman, wing person, right? But then, there's places to do that and there's places not to do that. And so I run a support group, right? That's probably not the place. If people are looking for mental health support, probably not the place to find a date, right? How about the workplace? People are there for work. They're there to get a paycheck and pursue their passions. Not the place for dating. That can, potentially come into harassment, and that's not good. How about the gym? People are all sweaty and they're really just trying to work out and then go home. Again, a place where it could be perceived as harassment. Not the place, right? People try to keep to themselves and do their thing and leave. Right. So there's a distinction between like people are there to kind of have a good time, right? Maybe it's a concert, maybe it's a baseball game or a football game, soccer game. Right. Those could be, places to maybe, strike up a conversation and then potentially pursue somebody in a romantic way or dating. And then there's places that just aren't meant for that. And so like, how do you start? Right? What's the first step? It's really just basic conversation, which again can be hard if you have a lot of anxiety and you maybe like the person a lot, you get flustered, you don't know what to say. That's totally normal. It happens all the time. Right, but just basic conversation. And we have a few things on the next couple of slides about that. I truly think that in order to set yourself right in this area, you have to figure out where you're coming from, what you're looking for. Right? What are your goals? What are you looking for? A lot of people assume they're looking for a relationship right off the bat, long-term, forever person. And the truth is, it just takes longer. The first time, or you're gonna have to meet a lot of people before you meet the one, and that's just how it is. Some people are looking for what are called hookups, which is like quick kind of sex, one night stand kind of thing. Other people are looking for kind of relationship, getting to know you, and it really runs the gambit between short term and long term. And the truth is, you have to figure out what you're looking for and what they're looking for. And if it doesn't match, if you're looking for a quick one night stand and they're looking for a relationship, it's just not going to match. Your expectations for how the person is perceiving you, or how quickly you're getting to know somebody, it's just not going to match. And then likewise, right? If you are looking for someone who's going to be your 20-year person or longer, and they're looking to see you in a weekend, like that's it. So the moral of the story is communication is very important. We had some questions beforehand about communication, and some folks on the Slido said communication is a barrier. So this is one thing that communication is really important for. Communication is important for, right? Figuring out what your goals are, what their goals are. Another big thing is, are you ready to date? Some people assume they have to rush into dating. And the truth is, some people just aren't ready for it. Whether your mental health isn't there, maybe you're just too busy, right? Someone said time management. If you're trying to fit in 5 different things and a relationship, maybe the relationship isn't the priority, or if it is, figuring out what other things to cut. And that's coming from someone who does way too much. I do a lot of stuff, and time management is also, important to me. But the truth is, right, when you meet somebody, you're meeting their past, their present, and their future self. And same for you, right? Whenever you bring yourself into a romantic conversation or just a regular conversation, you're bringing all of your baggage, all of your stuff, right? But then you're bringing who you are in the present. And then you're also bringing your future goals and dreams. So that's very important. And, some of the self-reflection would go a long way. We had a question beforehand about, doing the dating apps, doing the normal, typical stuff that people always talk about, and it's just not working. The question I would have is, is what you're looking for matching the setting you're going to? Right? Are you going to a place where people have the same goals as you? Something that also that question brought to me was, instead of going to somebody head on, like, hey, I want to date you, maybe being their friend first, and I'll talk about friends are always good, right? Being their friend first and then using their network, because then if you're their friend and they have another friend who's single and you're single, if you guys are good enough friends, they say, hey, I might have this friend, right? So it's not always about the person, what can you do for me now? It's also about how do you build your network? And this is a professional thing too, but in terms of social and romantic stuff, how can you build your network and use the friends of other people to meet your goals? So and then of course there are more structured scenarios like speed dating, which can be very draining if you're like saying your whole shtick every single time, right? But that's probably the most like structured way to do it, and there's people who are also single. Speed dating is actually nice because it's already like, you know, that they're there for the same reason you are. And so there's no shame in speed dating. I think it's still a thing that people do. I think dating apps are sort of like the online version of speed dating. And so if I would say if dating apps haven't worked for you, consider something in person with the same level of commitment, which is none, right? Speed dating has zero commitment and all of the upside. If you meet someone you like, that's really cool. If you don't like any of them, say la vie. And of course, singles events, right? That's another thing that's structured to facilitate conversation. And there's activities to do. And I think once you do meet somebody, right, going on a date, having activities to do is really, really great. Because you just don't, you can also sit and talk. I'm a huge fan of that. But some people also work better or learn the other person better when they see them doing an activity. And so some singles events, are based around activity. Sometimes it's just food and drink, and that's perfectly fine. Right. So if I would say on this front, like if you're going through the motions and you're doing the dating apps and the stuff just doesn't work out, consider something more structured. And then you might have a better shot at meeting somebody with the same goals as you. Of course, my parents met at a singles event, so that's why I'm here today. All right. Is this a date? No, it's a fig. Okay. I'm a jokester. Is this a date? Should it be a date? Should we be, boyfriend, girlfriend, partners? These are all, questions that you should figure out ahead of time. You don't want to go 2 years down the line and figure out, or like, a month or something, and realize that you shouldn't be dating. It's just not a good match. Right. And so autistic people, myself included, thrive on pattern recognition and rule making. And so I think in this area, a lot of times is trying to read body language and trying to figure out social cues is tough, especially, in a area where, considering dating, things can be very subtle and very hard to pick up on. I never know when someone's flirting with me. It's always been something that I've never picked up on. And so, one of the things I'll say is just be yourself, right? But in terms of figuring out if something's a date or not, or figuring out if something should be a date, should you be boyfriend, girlfriend, partners? That's definitely a conversation that you need to have. And that's where some of that communication comes in, that honesty. But mental rules I think are really important. So coming up with a few if-then statements, in certain scenarios. If this happens, then that's the outcome. The world's not black and white like that, but it's an interesting framework to start from. And of course, as when we get to talking about boundaries, some of this black and white thinking is helpful, because if someone's breaking your boundaries, you want to be able to check, like, okay, I need to flag this, have a discussion about it. So we talked about communication. That's also verbal, nonverbal. We'll talk a little bit about body language. But communication is verbal, and it's also not, which makes it complex and challenging and yucky. But that's where communication comes in, and that's where the honesty and knowing really what you're looking for, and thinking about, what do I want to learn from this person, and be curious. I think curiosity is something I value highly. And so, I think anxiety can partially be quelled, right? We can reduce anxiety sometimes by just asking a question, asking sort of, is this how you feel? Do you feel this way? I'm getting this sense from your body language or your verbal language. Is this how you feel? Or in the topic of, should this be a date? Asking them, how do you feel about this? I feel this way. Does that match how you feel? So these are all interesting things. Will Ferrell's really cool, right? So is it love or are we just friends? I said before, you can never have enough friends. And so actually, interestingly enough, I went on a virtual date with somebody and we ended up just being friends. And they're one of my best friends now. And it's like, not weird after, once you kind of hang out a little bit as friends, but I think we think about this black and white, right? Romantic and just social, or some people consider it the oh, I forgot the word. So it's like just dating or just friends. And the truth is, like, if you don't right, if you go back and the question is, should we be official? And the answer is no, well, then you can just try friends. You don't have to throw them away or kind of like be someone who you would want to date, right? And so if you see it as a one-way street, like this is only love, and then that's just not where you guys are in the moment, right? I think some of this takes time. I mean, people change. And so what I'm trying to say is if it ends up not being, date compatible, that's okay. But if you still like them as a person, consider being their friend, because at the end of the day, it reduces isolation, you feel less lonely, and friends are just cool, man. Like friends are good. Also, when you do find somebody who you want to date and you end up dating, it's important. It's a green flag, right? It's a good sign when someone has friends. And so the more friends you have, or, the more like close friends you have, like, that's a good sign. And so one sign when you're looking for someone to date, if they don't have a lot of friends, it's not a red flag necessarily, but if you're able to maintain relationships, people like that, and it's a good sign. And it decreases anxiety about who you are as a person if you are able to maintain relationships. So that's that. Okay, so let's see, check on time. All right. So we're thinking about the non-negotiables, right? And I like this image here about, the autism spectrum is not linear, right? You're not less autistic, very autistic. It's things that you're good at. And so some of these here, so you might be more social, right? Over here, you might have more sensory needs or less sensory needs, right? Your executive functioning might be different. So, thinking about who you are and what you're good at, and then reflecting that to who are you hanging out with, right? And who is dating compatible for you? Who is friend compatible for you? That's another question. Right. But in terms of dating and relationships, thinking about like the day-to-day stuff, right? Like how would you get along with this person doing chores? Like, do they take out the trash? Do they you know, and so do they accept if you're a stimmer, do they accept your stimming? If they don't accept your stimming, it might not be the right match, right? What about communication style? Everyone has a different communication style. Do you appreciate someone who's more direct? Someone who is more passive? Thinking about some of this in a partner, do they have good attention to detail? Can they tell when you're not doing okay? Are they empathetic to you? Do they show up on time? That's huge. Right. And so thinking about how you're coming into the dating world and then what you're looking to get out of it, not only in a product or a thing, but what type of person are you looking for? And so are you looking for someone who's just like you, right? Sometimes the old adage is like opposites attract. And so if you're too similar, that might not work out. But if you're like just opposite enough that it's good, right? So that's why not rushing into things and taking it one step at a time is really good, especially if there's someone who you really admire. Taking things slow takes the pressure off of you, takes pressure off of them and the situation in general. Right. So we have communication styles. We also have learning styles. And so, sometimes when you go on a date and there's a lot of talking, right? You might have auditory or listening differences. That's something to consider. Do they talk a lot? Are they touchy-feely? Are you touchy-feely? Right? So all of these styles between communication, learning, again, this is just some reflection about what do you bring into this space? What are you looking to get out of it? And what's your ideal, or what would you be willing to um like what would you be willing to compromise on? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides. We go together like coffee and donuts. So this is my favorite part because I love learning about people. I love learning about what drives people, right? Why are people the way they are? What are people really interested in doing, right? And so a lot of people on the spectrum just don't like small talk. And myself included, sometimes I'm just not about it. Like I don't care about the weather. Uh, it just does, I don't care, right? But sometimes it's necessary. And the reasons it's necessary is because small talk is a way in the society we live in to determine someone's vibes, right? Like, are they good? Are they bad? Right? Like, who are they? And so, I love sort of like starting small, right, with the small talk, and then just like kind of exploding. So you can take something as small as the weather and extrapolate, right? Like, oh, it's really cold outside, and then take that to like, well, I kind of want to live in New England, and then you can open up somewhere else, like, oh, I might want to live in Canada. Like, oh, have you traveled anywhere internationally? I mean, it's just starting with stuff so small, you can really learn a lot about people, and maybe practice some of that on ourselves, right? Like, way you could have you could make a script, right? No shame in that. um Definitely think about like some of your answers to these questions ahead of time, not necessarily like guiding where the conversation goes, right? Sometimes we want to be flexible, especially in these in the dating conversations. And so assuming you're having coffee with someone or you're sitting down for dinner, there's going to be time for conversation. And the moral of the story is that if you're on a date, if you're learning about the person, chances are you're going to have to talk about what they like, what you like, right? Sharing your interests. um Silence is not a bad thing, as we'll see. But definitely kind of like not having the conversation be too one-sided. I will say, like, when you find the right person, it's definitely easier. Right. And so if the conversation is not going well, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just not a good match. And that's something that you have to consider. I think, again, going back to the media and the messaging over time, we internalize a lot of stuff and we assume that we're doing something wrong when it's just maybe not the right person. And the good news is there's almost like 8 billion people in the world. There's got to be another one. Okay, so going back to the conversation thing, uh, sharing your interests is important, but then also what happens when the person shares their interest with you? Well, if you like them, it's important to show it. And so the way you can do that is by continuing the conversation and talking about what they like, and then also sharing your thoughts too. I think having a balanced conversation is important. And going back to the learning and communication styles, some people are talkers, some people are not talkers. Uh, some people might have time to process, right? And so asking 5 questions while they're trying to process the first one, it just take things slow with that particular person. But then also, right, if they are asking you a bunch of questions and they're overwhelming you, it's important to communicate that. And so I really like this slide again because there's just so much potential here where you go from, wow, it's really hot outside. I wish I could go to the beach. Have you ever thought about going to Bermuda? Oh, I like traveling internationally. The world is endless when you think about small. I've never thought I'd say that, The world is endless when you think about small talk. But truly, when it comes to dating, this stuff is really important for getting off on the right foot. And so again, right, building connection, asking questions about what they like. And this could happen in person or on the dating app or in the speed dating. I assume the speed dating, more structured things would have communication, like topic questions for you. And then also you could also Google some of this, right? So go into Google and be like, what are good conversation topics for dates? And then practice some of your responses. No shame in that. My partner actually, on our first Zoom date, pulled up New York Times list of 30 questions for a date. And I was like, what? But right, it's important. So do you prefer mountains or beaches? Right. And then you can learn a lot about them, and you can kind of riff off some of these other things, asking follow-up questions like, how does that make you feel? Right. Maybe you're talking about a topic, like, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? Again, like maybe starting light first, right? Not going into the heavy political topics or other like existential stuff right off the bat. Because I think another thing, right, is like a good quality to have is being easy to talk to. And so if you're always, sometimes I am accused of this, bringing up like really heavy stuff on like a middle of the day, easygoing kind of thing. It's like you have to sort of match the conversation topic with the setting. If you're having a nice time and you're trying to have a nice time, don't talk about the heaviest thing in the world. Maybe I could learn that. And then, over time, that person is going to be is going to see you as someone who's easy to talk to because you're not stressful in that way. That's a tip I could take. Right. And then giving a compliment, you look pretty today, you look really handsome. That's an option. On a first date or whatever, like it could be a little heavy. I would say like I like, if someone's like talking about their interests and like what they do, you could say I like how passionate you are. It seems like you're really into what you do, and I admire that. So that's a neutral way, like not talking about their appearance, which has like romantic connotations, but like talking about like sort of neutral stuff, like wow, and then reflecting back on what they just said. So having follow up and like a lot of that, like verbal and nonverbal feedback is important. Right. So I think I said this earlier. If you ask a question like, we're in October. Oh, do you like going apple picking, pumpkin picking, cider donuts? I like going apple picking. And then seeing what goes. So instead of like asking them and then waiting for them, maybe you can get the conversation started, answer your own question. I actually didn't know that when I was doing research for this. I found that online. So it's always good to go to sources you trust. And then that includes sometimes reputable sources online. Okay, so body language and verbal language, right? So thinking about some of this here on the right side, right, looking at people's eyebrows, looking at their mouth, like is it like frowning, or are they looking at their watch a lot? Or are they kind of looking around? I would caution to be too anxious about this. Sometimes I look for cues where they aren't. And so again, that if you're worried about body language, I would maybe use verbal language, right? So if you see someone's body language, maybe ask once. Don't ask too much, because that shows maybe insecurity or anxiety. Right. So like I see maybe you're checking your watch a lot. Do you have somewhere to be? It could just be that they have somewhere to be. And they could really be enjoying, your presence. And so if that's the case, maybe you could schedule another time and then just end it here. Right. So turn some of those perceived negatives into positives. Right. Are you the only one who's reaching out? And on dating apps, oh gosh, it's a mess on these apps. It's not your fault. They're a mess by design. There's a couple good ones. I'll talk about them. Right. But if they don't respond to you, that, just let it go. It can be considered harassment if you keep reaching out when someone doesn't. Like if you have like multiple texts in a row where they haven't responded and then you text again, that can be considered harassment. Right, if you're in person and they seem closed or, kind of insular, like it's not always about you. It could just be how they are that day. But maybe ask if they're okay, right? And then maybe go from there. On the other hand, and we know this for being on the spectrum, sometimes the body language gives us false alarms. And so if they're still contributing to the conversation, or if they're still saying, yeah, I want to go on this activity with you, hopefully they're not saying yes when they mean no, but it could be that if their body language shows one thing but they're still engaging with you on another front, so the moral of the story is like it can be confusing, and moral of the story is like use your communication skills verbally and just fact check, right? Some of our cues and assumptions, right, from what we bring from the past can give us thoughts in our head. And so fact check these thoughts with with words and just questions. Okay, so boundaries are super important. I don't think I would have to say that. Boundaries are just all around us, not even just in the dating world. Boundaries are self-protection. It's sort of how we care for ourselves and other people. And so, it's important to set boundaries for yourself. We'll have some examples on the next slide. Time management, as someone said, a couple of people said, is super important. And so something I have to learn is don't pack your whole schedule back to back to back to back. And so if you have stuff going on and then someone's like, hey, let's go out. Oh yeah, I got time. But if you're going to be really tired from work, but you technically have time, like maybe schedule that for some downtime or for some me time. And so not only does that preserve yourself and your own, it doesn't drain you, it also, make sure that you're going to a date or a place that you're looking to meet people, just in general. Just make sure you're bringing your best self. And, if you're scheduling yourself back to back to back, chances are you're not going to be well rested and taking care of yourself. And then the person's going to be like, wow, they were really off today. Well, it's not you. It's just, you're really booked. It's you're really booked. So those are some thoughts on that. Happy to hear any thoughts so far in the chat. If people have questions or thoughts about any of the stuff I've mentioned so far or any of the themes, definitely happy to receive some of that in the chat. Boundaries are not just in dating, as I said, and it's regardless of disability. So people with or without autism, with or without disabilities, need their own boundaries, need to respect other people's boundaries. And it's just really important. So thinking about boundaries for ourselves and the other people that we're with, it's important to have the language for this. And so, right, thinking about if someone's looking for a response from you, I think sometimes today we're always supposed to give, our thoughts right on the spot, right? Sometimes it's okay to be like, I'll have to get back to you on that. Oh, let me have some time to think. It's okay to process. It's important to process, right? If someone's like, hey, you want to date me right now? You're like, whoa, And then likewise, we, don't come on so strong to be like, hey, you want to date me right now? I'm not saying anyone here is doing that, but it's an example of, letting people process stuff. And you'll have a higher chance. Right. I'm a yes man. I'm a yes person. I appreciate the invite, but won't be able to make it. Sometimes I have to learn to say no to stuff. I don't know if anyone here is like that. I think a lot of people have opinions. It's important if you're having a conversation like that to say, I respect your opinion, but I have my own opinion too. And so I think, for example, if we're on like a first date or something, and we happen to get into like a hot topic or whatever, you know, it's important to be like, you can share your opinion, but then also the other person's able to have their own opinion, and respecting that boundary if they're setting it. Right. This one's huge. I need to focus on myself. That's something that we can use. It's also important if someone else says that to us, right? If we're like, hey, you want to date me? Like, hey, have you thought about dating? Are you single? Person just might not be in the right place. And so they said they need to focus on themselves. Okay. Um, that said, like, you know, you could potentially still be friends. Like, I'm not saying throw them away because they're not going to date you. Right. You can always have friends. And so that actually shows a lot of humanity and a lot of flexibility, and a nice pivot, right? Sometimes we have our romantic feelings and it's hard to turn those off, but if it's possible, you know, thinking about friendship as well, just, typical friendship. So these are some really good examples of setting boundaries. And of course, the benefits of setting boundaries, I've used this in another presentation I've done. It's a really good graphic, right? It takes away some stress. It defends against burnout. It promotes independence if you're able to set your own boundaries and stick to those boundaries. It allows you to do stuff by yourself and really improves your emotional, mental health. It's part of self-care. Right. And then people sometimes respect you for that. Like if you say no to some stuff, or if you, sort of defend yourself in a way, like I need to practice self-care, or I need to take care of my mental health. People, that's respectable. Like people will respect you for that. Okay, so we're coming up almost to 8 o'clock. A few more slides, right? So we'll talk about green flags and red flags. So the green flags are good things, so the things you want to look for in people, friendship, relationship, like romantic, right? They care about your interests. I'm a train guy. I love trains. I'm a classic train nerd. I went to the B&O Museum in Baltimore recently. I was there for 2 hours. I loved it. But if you're with somebody and they just like kind of put down some of the stuff you like to do, or if they're like, oh, that's for babies, I mean, that's not cool. Like you don't want to, you might consider your relationship again. Are your skills complementary, right? Do you feel, not feel, but do you are your strengths complementary to what they might need? Like are you, of course that takes communication and thoughtfulness on both parts. But do you fill in some of the gaps that they need help with? And likewise, do they help you with some stuff that you need help with? Think about this part a little more, complementary skills. Think about what your skills are, what your areas to improve are, and think about if you're with somebody, this could be a conversation topic. Like this is totally neutral. It's not committal. You can be like, I'm really good at washing dishes, or I'm really good at navigating public transit. And they'll be like, oh, I'm awful at that. Or like, oh, I'm really good at this. And you say, oh, I'm awful at that. That's really good conversation stuff. Fodder is what I call it, conversation fodder. And you can learn a lot about people like that, right? They respect your boundaries. That's important. They're responsible for their own emotions. This is huge. A good sign is when someone doesn't put their emotional burden on you, and likewise us for them, right? So, something happens and you expect them to, take care of all your emotions, right? Ask you how you feel, like calm you down. That's okay, like once or twice, but if it becomes a pattern where we don't have the skills to do that for ourselves, or if they don't, like if they're having a bad day and it impacts your day every time, that's a red flag, right? So let's go on to red flags. We always want to go into relationships and dating with our whole self, and we want to be the best person we can be. And so if you're going into a dating scene expecting someone else to complete you or to fill in your gaps, for example, like, you might consider like why you're going into dating. Do you still have some more work to do on yourself? And so if someone says, oh, I love being with you, you complete me, that's a red flag that, you might consider having a conversation with them about, are they really ready to date? Because that takes a lot of draining and it just completely changes your life. Right. Yeah. Red flag might be like they don't allow you to see your friends and they want to spend all the time with you. It's important to spend time with your partner or someone you're dating, or your friends, right? This is the same for friends. This is a lot of stuff for friends too. Um, and so, if they don't allow you kind of to have your own time, or if they don't trust that you're not cheating on them, I think cheating is not good. Um, and they also have to trust that you're not going to do that. And so if they don't trust you to do that, that warrants a conversation. So that's important, being able to do your own stuff on your own time and having them trust that you'll be there for them. And of course, pressuring you into activities is never good. And this is the same for friendship, right? You never want to have friends that pressure you when you say no. Okay, online dating, very, very important. It's just a reality in our world. There's a lot of people who have found relationships. I've found most of my relationships on dating apps, and it's just sort of the way the world is right now. I will say with a caveat that there is still in-person opportunities for all you old school folk. It's still possible to meet people in person, and I would wager that there are more opportunities after COVID, because people have recalibrated what they're looking for and what things mean to them. And so, maybe they're more willing to strike up a conversation with you. Maybe they're looking for more social connection, because if there's one thing we learned during COVID is that people are really lonely. And so if you strike up a conversation with somebody, at one of these safe locations, like a concert or a sporting event where it's in public, people are more likely to be receptive, I would think. That being said, online dating it exists, and there's a lot of opportunities for online dating, right? A lot of opportunities for connection and a lot of opportunities to get scammed. And so it's just, some of the profiles are just like not, they're kind of obvious, right? And so you want to make sure you're, trashing that one. Sometimes though, as the fakes get better, it might be harder to figure out. And so, if you're someone who has trouble being safe online, a dating app is probably not for you. You might consider some other avenue. That being said, there are real people on dating apps, because like I said, everyone's trying to date. Most people are trying to date. And so dating apps are just one way to meet people. Never give out personal information unless you've had, like, I don't know, this is tough, because the thing goes that if you've had a conversation, right, and you really want to meet them in person, sometimes people exchange phone numbers. And so I'm not going to be the one to tell you to give out your phone number. That's not what I'm here for. Right. But just never give out like personal information. And especially don't give out money. One thing could be like, once you have a conversation for a few days and you're interested in meeting this person online, I would say, like, before you give out your phone number, meet them, like make it a public place, right? In a brightly lit area, like, do an activity. And, that being said, like, be really careful that it's a real profile. There are fakes out there. And one of the points, the second one here, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. This stuff takes time and effort, unfortunately, right? So if the person's like, I want to date you now, and they have like a really hot picture, yeah, it's just like, if it's like your eyes go crazy, it's like probably too good to be true, and it's probably a fake profile. And so unfortunately, this stuff takes time, it takes effort. And if it's like really too good to be true, like they're like, I want to date you now, give me your money. It happens, guys. don't do that. And also don't spend your whole day on dating apps, and certainly don't pay for them. There are payment options for that. Just don't pay for it. I had a friend who paid for it, and he was on it the whole day. He found someone he really liked, and she's great, but like it should not consume your whole thoughts like all day, and it's just not healthy. Right. And so basically what happens is when you pay, it allows you like unlimited access to swipe all day. And if you don't pay, you have a certain limited number of swipes. And so it's really tempting to pay to keep swiping. But I think this, tunes into some of our like social media addiction, where like we are, our brain is fed by the swiping and the pictures. Don't spend your whole day on this. Just don't. Okay, so I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip that. I want to talk about consent really quickly. Consent is very, very important, right? So once you get all the conversation done and you meet them and you're going through some of those steps, and you want to, make a move, you want to kiss them or you want to hug them, right? Definitely ask first. Huge thing is asking and then listening, right? So if they say no, or if they're not sure, anything less than a total yes is a no. It's just what it is. If it's not a total yes, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. That's sort of one of our if-then scenarios that we should put in, right? If it's not a yes, then it's a no. Right, and consent can be revoked at any time. If they're under the influence of alcohol or anything else, they can't consent. If they're sleeping, they can't consent. Right, if they're not sure what you're asking for, it's not consent. Consent is still there, should still be there, even if you're in a relationship, and it should really be given freely, not like coerced or forced. Right, so here we have some language. Do you mind if we kiss? I had a great time tonight. Do you mind if I give you a goodbye hug? This is all healthy stuff to ask. Don't assume based on, I think sometimes we try to like act out stuff in the movies. This is not something you should act out on. It's you need their consent, and you need to do your own thing, because what you and them might have is special, and not like it's not able to be replicated in a movie, right? A lot of that stuff is scripted and there for our consumption. But when you're in the real world, finding a real person, this stuff takes effort and it takes trial and error. And so, we have to kind of like work through this and figure out what you and them have, is special, not a movie script. Again, like for consent, practice about it, right? In a low stakes situation, it can just be something as simple like, can I get the door for you? With your parents, with your friends, practice how it feels to ask and then receive that feedback, because you don't want the first time you're practicing consent to be when you want to kiss somebody, because you're not going to know how it feels and it's going to be awkward and everything. Kissing is awkward anyways, right? But like practicing consent before you need to get it. That's as simple as that. Okay. Consent is freely given. Fries, right? I love fries. Freely given, it's able to be reversed. They have to be informed about it. They have to be enthusiastic about it. And they have to be specific about it. Right. So first of all, considering if this is the time and place for that. If you're at work, or again, like one of those scenarios, if you're at the gym, can I kiss you now? Probably first step, it's just not the right time. Okay. And then, in other areas, like you ask them, if they say yes, you go yes. If no, say, I hear, here's some language for you. Like, I hear you, I respect your choice, right? Anything less than a yes is a no. Really important stuff. Okay, so just one or two more. So what really matters, right? This dog I watched one time, like this is such a nice picture. Right, what really matters in life? Am I really a good boy? It's the day-to-day stuff, right? It's the chores, it's the match. It's like, do they make you feel something in inside? You know, do they kind of turn your stomach upside down, right? Uh, you know, that could be anxiety. It could be like, ooh, I like them, you know, but then you got to start slow, build up over time, being yourself, right? No one wants to go on a few dates and then have you be someone totally different. uh, it can maybe show that you're not being truthful or honest, right? And it's the same thing on the dating apps too. If you're typing something like you want to be yourself, you know, again, with all of those qualifiers we had earlier about some of the conversation topics, um, and just like don't try to be someone you're not. Oh, I have that on the slide. Look at that. Just, you know, be yourself, and the right person, you're gonna find the right person. Spending quality time with them, right? You know, again, I think a lot of the stuff that we see in movies is like hyper animated and hyper like, you know, hyper sort of curated, right? But it's like the it's like the mowing the lawn stuff. Like once you're settled down, like some of that like quality time, like hanging out on the couch watching a movie, right? You know, doing stuff for your partner and having them do stuff for you is really good. And again, with the emotional stuff, like do you build them up when they're feeling bad, but do they also reciprocate, right? Do they also help you when you're feeling sad? We all have bad days, right? But like basically the point is like how do you guys manage your relationship or dating when either or both of you are having a bad day? That's what really matters. Okay, so the last slide I have is Love on the Spectrum. There was 2 seasons from this, one on the Australian and one on the American. This was a really interesting show. As an autistic person, they were not showing it for me. They were showing it for the general audience. Um, and so really what they tried to show in these shows is that you know, autistic people have desires, have romantic desires. We want to find people to love. We want to find friends. We want to find people to date. We want to learn who's out there. We want to feel love. You know, we want to feel all this stuff. And I think they showed a little bit of like the nitty gritty, like this stuff takes time. And that the neurodivergent folks also go through this. And so the boundaries, the consent, the conversation, you know, it's not based on disability. It's not based on ability. It's just the human condition, really. Some lessons that I think I took from this, right? First of all, you're never old enough to find love. I liked, you know, the span of people they had, you know, a lot of young people, but they had someone of older age. They had a lot of dates that just didn't work out, right? And they did some interviews with the folks and they were right back at it the next time. And so like just, you know, if you're not finding success now, it's okay because you'll find someone for you. Like I said, there's 8 billion people. Um, if you don't find the one on the first shot, that the odds actually are against you. So like in terms of like finding it on the first shot, you know, and then just keep going and you're going to find somebody because there's just so many people in the world and the chance that you found the one for you in the first shot is low. So that's even more encouragement to keep going and find them. Right. And then also just everyone's awkward, especially in the first couple dates. So I really like this show because it normalized a lot of stuff that people go through. Um, so with that, I'm done with my presentation. Happy to take questions. And I see there's a lot of people in the chat. I don't know if Melissa or anyone
Comments,
else.
Steven, back and forth. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Here's my email address. I'm a licensed master's social worker. So feel free to reach out with other questions or comments. But happy to continue the conversation for a little bit.
That's great. And yeah, please feel free to, if you have questions, to put them in the chat. And maybe we'll kick it off with one that was submitted online, Stephen, if that's okay. Let's see. One that we had. How can I remain authentic and unmasked in relationships?
Yes, yes. So masking is, um, a topic that a lot of autistic people go through, and it's tough, right? Because sometimes if we don't have like a great connection with somebody, or if it's not the right person for us, like um, in some cases, we feel like we're not able to show our entire selves, and so I think it really depends on the situation, the setting, right? The environment is a huge factor. If you go on a date and it's now noisy and you can't hear anything, it's definitely not you. It might just be that you're having a hard time hearing anybody. Uh, and so, definitely the right conditions, the right person you're with. And if you're with somebody who is a good match. And then also like your mental health too. Are you anxious? You might be masking. I don't know any of the specifics for this person, but I think that the conditions matter a lot for how we bring ourselves to a situation. And so the likelihood that we'll mask if we're comfortable is low.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. What avenues are there to find a romantic partner? I'm having trouble with meeting new people. I work full-time and find it hard.
Yeah. So working full time, meeting new people. Yeah, I mean the truth is like work takes up a lot of our time. And so it sounds like you're in a you're interested in meeting someone to date. And so work definitely takes up a lot of time. I would say thinking about like the times that you're free, find someone who has like a similar schedule, finding someone who, if you work mornings and they work evenings, this happens all the time. Where it's like, and you're dating, like you're living together and they never see each other. It creates the conditions for miscommunication, stuff like that. And so what avenues are there? I think like a singles event in the evening would be a perfect start, or, a time where you're not working, and then maybe take a nap first. I took a nap before this presentation to make sure that I was in the right space. If you're coming right from work, it's fine. Just be aware that you might be tired, and so that the way that you present might not be your entire self.
Thank you. Let's see. Question here. What advice do you have for members of the LGBTQIA plus community on obtaining accurate information on dating and relationships?
That's a great question. So I am bi, but I've mostly been in straight relationships. And so I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. There are resources, definitely. I know that there's an app called Grindr, which it's basically like Tinder, where the goal of Grindr is not to find a relationship. It's to have like that quick, like quick sex or whatever. And so for information, I would say reputable local nonprofits, advocacy organizations, if there's any local or state government websites with information, I would trust those. Just doing a Google search, just making sure that it's a .org or .gov. .com can be dicey sometimes. But yeah, definitely, finding information from a trusted source is important.
Thank you. Family pressure to get married. How can one address this? The family does not know, doesn't believe in autism, and lives in a foreign country.
Yes, this can be tough. So my partner is of a different culture and different religion, and so there's a lot of I don't think there's disconnects, right? But there's definitely sort of like, they're wary of me a little bit. Like, what are his intentions? Is he going to convert? A lot of this sort of anxiety about parents having anxiety about their children finding the right person in terms of different cultures, you know, carrying on the family line is really important. You know, having you know, like family value, like the family name means a lot. And so finding someone who is there to you know, uphold that family name. In terms of marriage, you know, has a lot of cultural and religious significance. And so it can be tough, like especially with modern versus traditional values. And so just having that conversation, that communication openly is really important. Not necessarily like with the parents, yes, but also with your partner, because I think what's most important is that, you know, you and the partner are on the same page, and then let the partner deal with the parents. You know, I think trying to mull things over with in-laws or future in-laws without that trust there can break a lot of trust. So, you know, I would say like you know, just making sure that you and your partner are on the are in the right space, and, you know, letting them handle the in-laws.
Good. I have a hard time making conversations with others. How can I improve that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I have a hard time making conversations with others. How can I improve that?
I think that was for me.
Anita, yeah, thanks, Anita.
Hey there. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, without going too much into your personal situation, you know, it's tough. Conversation is tough sometimes. Putting yourself out there, you're not sure how you're going to be received. You know, depending on the situation, if you're walking in, I mean, gosh, I walked into a room full of people this morning, and I knew like maybe two people, and so everyone was chatting, and so when you're and I walked in alone too, so I sort of had to just like show up and start talking. Or I mean, I didn't have to, but I felt that inside. So starting conversation, you know, I think, like I said, keeping it light, right? You know, if you're at an event, stating the obvious, I think, is a good place to start. So, wow, this is a nice place. Or you know, starting kind of awkward. I think because we feel like we're awkward, we walk in feeling awkward. Like when we feel like we're awkward already, we kind of feel awkward, like, hi, I'm awkward kind of thing. When in reality, like when you first meet somebody, it's just always awkward. And that's without disability, with disability, autism, like, you know, like neurotypicals, you know, they are awkward all the time, and no one really puts a label on that. You know, I think like normalizing, like, hey, we don't know each other yet, and then like taking steps to get to know each other, starting small, right? Stating the obvious, hey, it's really nice, or it's nice to meet you, you know. Some of the sort of like the low pressure things can really be a good place to start.
I'm sorry, I don't think I can see you. Usually I wouldn't understand what some people are saying. Hello?
Anita, did you hear Steven's answer?
No, sorry. I did I was I couldn't really see if you see the picture. I don't think I understood.
Okay. Yeah, basically starting small, right? Stating, you know, stating the obvious things that you know, hey, it's nice to be here. Or if you're in a room with somebody, like, wow, it's a nice room. Like I said, basically, if we feel awkward already, then we walk in being like, hi, I'm awkward. When really, you know, neurotypicals are awkward all the time, and we don't say anything about it. And so, you know, kind of like going into the awkwardness a little bit, like, hey, like, I know we just met, this is crazy, right? Being one of those pop songs. You know, I think you know, people who don't know each other are going to be awkward. I think it's just typical.
Thank you. Okay. Somebody's asking, can you personally recommend any autistic dating services?
Ooh, no, I can't, unfortunately, but I think maybe one exists. I think I heard of one. I don't remember what it's called, but that would be really cool. I would highly recommend it if I knew what it was.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned all the places that it's not appropriate for dating. Where is it appropriate though? You didn't mention that.
Yeah, sure. So appropriate places. I mean, we can also get some peer feedback too. If people have ideas of appropriate places to date, find a date, drop it in the chat. I think the power of community in this is really important. Some ideas I have. You know, well, my dad once told me, why don't you just meet people at the bar, which has, you know, alcohol involved, which is, you know, if you don't drink alcohol, then that's kind of a then that's off the list. But you know, historically, people meet people at the bar. Even if you don't drink, you know, it can be loud and it can be rambunctious. So I don't recommend the bar really, but it is a place I think historically, like if you're wondering where all the neurotypicals go, a lot of them, you know, go to the bar. That said, you know, a game shop, like a store, potentially might be a good place. Like if you are striking up a conversation with somebody, you know, that might, like a game shop, you know, that might be a good place. Or, you know, I know like Magic the Gathering, they have playing nights, right, where you can go play. I know somebody who does a bunch of tournaments. Or a convention, right? Like something that you have a common interest in that everyone goes for the same reason, is a really good place. Right. But if you're going out to eat and you try to flirt with the server, they're at work. And so that's a boundary where we shouldn't be hitting on the server trying to get their number, because that's actually harassment and they're just trying to get a job and leave. So don't do that. But at the same time, you know, if you go to a place where you're there for the common interest, right? Like for example, like a Comic-Con, or I don't know, there was the Washington Auto Show, or like a festival, you know, if or a concert, right? If you're there for the same reason, you kind of have a built-in common interest, and that's something to talk about. So those are some ideas.
Okay. Let's see. If consent is assumed, it can cross the boundary between legal and illegal, because I need to know how to give and follow some boundaries.
Right. Well, you should never assume consent. And so that's just sort of the first thing. You should never assume consent. You should always ask, and then listen. And that's sort of step by step there. Right. Need to give and follow boundaries. Yeah. You know, that's really important, because if, you know, I would say like you need to figure out like what your boundaries are, right? What you're willing to, like what feels good for you, you know, are you sensitive to touch? In that case, let them know that, you know, don't touch me. For example, like we just got a foster dog and he has, you know, he's very sensitive above, so he doesn't like people touching his head. And so, you know, when you're walking your dog, like setting boundaries for other people to touch your pets is super important. And so when you're walking your dog and someone's like, oh, what a cute dog. An important thing is to be like, well, you know, his name is this, but also he doesn't like this. Right. And so like, I think like around introducing ourselves, you know, putting out our pronouns or names, I wouldn't introduce yourself with saying like, you know, hi, my name is this, I don't like getting touched. But I would say it's important, you know, to fit into the conversation in whatever way you see as natural. Yeah, definitely, you know, figuring out what your boundaries are, and then, you know, not trying to guess their boundaries, but communicating back and forth. It's a two-way street, you know. There's probably a card game around it, but you could also like make a list, put something on paper. I think that is really important. Someone put, what about working with a matchmaker? I wouldn't know anything about that. That's very traditional, but I'm sure it could work. Yeah, especially if, you know, if someone knows you really well, you know, maybe they have suggestions, but ultimately I think it's about you and your journey.
Also, Kristen listed about meetups. We have, and there are groups that meet socially throughout the area. We have an adult social group. I know many of you are involved. There are other groups as well. We have a listing that we are happy to share. I'm going to put my email in here, and I did list Steven's email if you wanted to reach out to him. Someone also asked me if you provide one-on-one support services, Steven. So that was one of the questions.
Yeah, I do. Feel free to email me. Let's see. So there's someone who said there's a dating app just for autistics called Hiki. That's interesting. Yes, meetups are really good. Yeah, I would just say, be careful about meetups. It's a publicly available thing, and so you get everybody from the public. And so just being cautious about who's showing up to those things. I'm part of a meetup that I go to regularly every week. It's a really good thing. But we know each other and over time. But if you're doing like a one-off meetup, you don't really know them. So just being careful.
I think we are going to wrap it up. We got one more question. Maybe one more, or I closed my question list, but Jabbar, you got your hand raised. We're going to give you the last question, and then we're going to close it down for the evening. Go ahead, Jabbar. Do I need to unmute you? Let's see here.
We can't see the slideshow we talked about tonight. Please email on my email.
We're going to share the slideshow, and the recording will be available. We'll send you, everybody who registered, an email in just a few days when the recording's ready, and we'll also put it on our website. Great question. Thank you so much. And
what can I have a relationship with a female who has autism?
Can you say that one more time?
Because I've been doing a lot of harassing women a lot. I need help how to date women appropriately.
Okay. Steven?
Yeah. I just want to normalize that, I think a lot of people are having trouble in this space. Like I said, especially since COVID, but even before COVID, people, we kind of had to learn how to be social again after being in lockdown for a while. I'd say, like I said, figuring out, the setting, making sure that you're in the right mindset, that you're bringing your full authentic self, but being respectful as well. Harassment's not okay, but I'm sure, you're coming at it from a caring angle. A lot of autistic neurodivergent folks, I think, do well in relationships together. But sometimes people trigger each other. So like I said, figuring out if you're complementary or not. And if you don't find the right one on the first try, just keep trying.
Thank you. And that'll close us out. I want to thank Steven so very, very much for being with us tonight and talking about this topic. I think we got a lot of good conversation, and certainly a lot of folks with questions. And again, we'll be sharing the slides and recording in just a few days. And also tonight, you're going to get a very short survey. We welcome your feedback on this and other webinars that you'd like information that you'd like to see us put forth. So thank you very much. And I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here.
You're welcome, Anita. It's good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Good night.
I wanted to thank Steven for giving me advice, for helping me out.
You're very welcome. That's great.
Okay.
Glad it was helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.